Welcome back to Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence, the #1 show for monetization, clarity, growth on the internet. Today, I am joined by Mitch Beinhaker. Mitch, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks, Steve. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show today. This is fun.
No problem. It is my pleasure. So Mitch is a lawyer. Before you cringe, he is not the kind of lawyer that is going to sue you. He is here to help you grow your business and protect your assets while you're doing it. He has a heart for entrepreneurs. Mitch, tell us where this all started for you, because I don't know too many lawyers that actually love entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I've always been kind of a business person, businessman at heart. When I was young, during the summers, I never really had a regular job. I always had little companies I was running. I'd be, running a business, stringing rackets for all the players because I was a tennis player. And in my high school, I guess like beginning of high school, I started a detailing company. Remember, detailing was really big. And, instead of just cleaning your car. So I started doing it for my uncle and some people at his office. And the next thing I know, we had people lined up, because they didn't have time to get their cars washed either. So they were like, oh, can you do our car? So it became like a business. I had a distributor of materials, and I sold the thing at the end of high school. And then when I got to college, I majored in economics and finance and personal finance, things like that. But it was business. It was like the division that I found that I could get into, or whatever, the games you have to, more games today than then. And I didn't really want to go to business school. I was like, I get my MBA. I'll be an analyst. I don't think I want to do that. I was more of an entrepreneur. But in those days, there wasn't entrepreneur curriculums, like nowadays you can major in entrepreneurship. Then it was like, why would you do that? Like that's, major in comic books. I mean, so, entrepreneur wasn't like this word. It was like a French word, right? Now everybody's an entrepreneur. So I guess, I then was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. My Jewish grandmother, may she rest in peace, was like, whatever you do, go to law school. And my uncle went to law school. My cousins have gone to law school. My dad didn't go to law school, but my other uncle was a doctor. That's what happens in Jewish families. So I was like, I don't know. So one day my best friend, Greg, in our fraternity house, he was probably drunk, so I'll preface this, said, I'm going to law school. And I was like, all right, I'll go to law school too. So about 2 weeks later, Greg sobered up and he's like, I'm not going to law school. And then I was like, oh, do I really want to go to law school? I was just drunk with Greg. So I decided, you know what? I wasn't ready to go work. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to become more analytical, a better writer, or certainly a better reader. It wasn't my strong point. So I decided to find a law school that would take me, give me some money, because my dad was like, listen, I got to take care of your sister, so good luck. And so I did that. My grandmother said she was going to pay for law school, but she thought it was $1,500 a year instead of $15,000. So nice. She helped, but it didn't quite cover the books. But
did you start a business to pay for law school? Please tell me.
I should have. I should have. I didn't. So when I got into law school, I kind of dropped the whole, business things. But then after law school, I was involved with different real estate companies and different things like that. But I was kind of defaulted to being, the lawyer. So what happened was my father has been in the life insurance business since like 1965. So I know all kinds of financial planners throughout the area, hundreds and hundreds. So, and I know their business. So what would happen is, instead of me being the partner in the deal or involved in the business, they'd be like, well, we need an attorney to do this, to do that, to put this agreement, to negotiate this transaction, to deal with this lease. And it just, blossomed from there. And I also do a lot of estate planning because of that too, as part of it. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you have a wide world of experience and influence coming into this. I want to talk a little bit. So the show is mostly entrepreneurs. They're out there listening. I want to talk about the things that you've kind of done for your entrepreneurial clients. You've protected them a little bit. You've helped with helping them become bought out, right? Getting them.
We've done some sales, purchases, acquisitions. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think a lot of people are interested in that, because a lot of people start, first off, entrepreneur as a French word, that is a brilliant way to look at it, because I think that's what it was. If you would have said in, the late 90s, I want to be an entrepreneur, people would have been like, what? You want to do what? You want to sell lemonade?
Yeah, right.
And now it's like, I think colleges got smarter because they started looking at like, well, why aren't people going to college? Well, they're being an entrepreneur. Well, right. You can teach that. I still think it's funny. I think it's like
I think Babson College was the first school to have an entrepreneurship program, I think.
I mean, to me, it's tongue in cheek because it's like, if you're really an entrepreneur, are you going to spend 4 years in college? No, you're going to Steve Jobs or Bill Gates and probably jet out.
All right. So Steve, that's the problem though. Like that's the problem that people get into, is because they think if you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, it means you're a cowboy and you're woohoo and you're running around. And then people do that and their businesses fail. So that's why we have such a high failure rate of business. That the people that go into business, and I don't know if they consider themselves founders or executives or startups or entrepreneurs, maybe, they come through business school, college, entrepreneurship programs with sound principles to writing a business plan, putting things in writing, being strategic about what they do. And you find that their level of success is much higher, right, than the people that are like, I can't get into college, so I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Like, don't do that. So even if you can't, go to night school, take classes, learn from the people that know. But I think your point's a good one. That's why my podcast is called The Accidental Entrepreneur, because it's people, it's like, oh, I don't like work, so I'm going to go start a business. And then 6 months later, they're asking me to help them wind down their business because it didn't make it.
Well, so if we talk about that, I think it is really a good sound business principles. I don't think you need an 80-page business plan. I'm a big fan.
Absolutely not. I agree with you 100%.
Big fan of short.
I got like 4 major sections, like a template you can boil it down to. And it doesn't have to be bound, and it doesn't have to be color, and it doesn't have to be in a binder, but it's got to be something you can pull up on your computer, you can refer to, you can use, change, right? But don't have it on napkins and Post-it notes all over your office. It's got to be a little bit more organized than that.
Does it keep me in my lane? Because that's the easiest, the biggest challenge I think entrepreneurs have is shiny objects. They're out of their lane. They're
very right brain. Yeah. Very right brain.
If you could stay in your lane,
you're
going to be way more successful. So I have a couple really good friends that are successful entrepreneurs. I would say half of them have an MBA or at least a business degree, maybe it's an undergrad. I would say 3 of them that I know have MBAs. They worked for either corporate consulting or they worked in like a business management role before doing their own. And they were all successful much faster. I would say within 6 to 8 months, they were profitable, and they have gone on to build a 7-figure business. One of them did it within a year.
Yeah. Well, because they knew what profitable was. I mean, a lot of people don't. And look, there's a lot of people that's successful, don't get me wrong, that don't even have a college education. Everybody says there's no correlation between where you go to school or what you do and all this stuff. That's true. But a lot of those people are successful in one thing. Like they find the thing that they're successful in and they do it and they figure it out and they do it well. Then they transition to another business and they struggle a lot. They sell their business and they can't, it was like a 1-off, maybe 2-off. But you're right. The guys who develop sound skills and go in it strategically and know what their profitability is and know what their cost of goods sold are and know what their pricing should be, definitely have a higher chance of success.
So let's unpack that a little bit, because I do think that is a key. I mean, I'm pretty active in the coaching world, and a lot of people become coaches because they're like, I don't like my job. So
yeah, I know, it's like a default thing.
So I'll be a coach, and then they struggle to make a couple grand a month, and they're struggling, but like they're not looking at cost of acquisition. They're not looking at what their average client lifetime value is. They're not looking at any of the numbers. And there's basically like 3 or 4 numbers that you have to have boilerplated, know what they are. So where would you actually, this is a great conversation because you're bringing it from a very analytical point.
Yeah, I love it.
Tell me what you would look for if somebody is out there and they're like, I'm leaving my job, I want to start a business. What should they put on their 1-page business plan? And what number should they start to flesh out?
Yeah, the lean canvas, right? If anybody's listening. All right. So I've looked at business plans and business templates, let's say, right? Because you can go online and find some, they're anywhere from 8 to 12 sections on a regular basis, right? But if you boil things down, there's really only 4 things that you need to pay attention to. Okay. You got to obviously pay attention to whatever your product or service is, right? The company or the product. Is it a company or is it just one product or whatever? The people that you need to run that company. If it's just you, great. But if it's not just you, if you don't have the skills, how are you going to get these people? Can you get these people? That may be a roadblock right there. The third thing is the marketing in the marketplace, right? Is there a marketplace? How do you market this thing? How are you going to develop business? All that type of stuff, which is probably where all the creative stuff comes in, right? And then the fourth, obviously, is the financials. Now, like you said, you don't need 80 pages of spreadsheets and projections out the wazoo, which, by the way, if you go out more than 3 to 5 years projecting, they're wrong. They're probably wrong more than a year, but 3 years is probably a good number. So, and it also depends whether you're raising capital or you're just doing it for your own edification. So, and then the financials, that's what nobody wants to deal with. They don't like numbers. But that's where all the failure happens, because you're charging $12 for your product and you find out it costs you 14. That's not going to get you very far. Right. So if you just kind of sketch out those 4 areas, you have the working framework of a business plan. Right? You have a place to start to go back. And the reason, like you had mentioned before, that you need a track to run on, the reason you need a track to run on, and this is a chapter in one of the books that I'm working on, well, the only book I'm working on really, about memory, right? We don't remember things correctly. That's why you need to have contracts. That's why you need to have written plans. That's why you need to do things in writing, because whatever it is, you won't remember what it was, right? Our brains don't work like a filing cabinet. It works like a big box where everything's dumped in there. And then you want something about our podcast, let's say, right? So I pulled this out. This was my experience about us talking, what we talked about. But over time, things get added into that and mushed in with that. And I think, well, no, I was talking about, the cost of meatballs in Italy with Steve. I'm sure, because I know that he said totally not true, right? And that's what happened. So you need a track to run on to go back and to say, oh yeah, I forgot. And to remind yourself, because that's why these guys are successful, because they write things down. Right.
I want to touch on that really quickly. You touched on just having contracts. One of the things that I had to learn when I got started was always follow up, even if it's not like a legally bound contract. You might disagree with this being a lawyer, but like I just send an email when we're starting to work together. This is the outline of what I'm agreeing to do in return for this amount of money, because then 3 months down the road, when somebody says, well, I thought, you were including a 28-step email sequence with
Correct.
The landing page.
Right.
Say, no. Here's the email.
Here's the note I sent you. You didn't respond. You didn't say no.
No, I make them. It costs nothing to have a signature program. So I have a signature program.
You can do that. That's perfect.
And I tell them right up front, this isn't legally binding. That's not why I'm sending it to you. I'm sending it to you so that you see it and we're on the same page, because that will make our relationship much better.
Well, it is to a certain extent legally binding. If they claim, Steve, you didn't do your job, you led me to believe we were doing X, Y, and Z, and you say, no, you signed off on it on April 22nd that we're doing this, and this was the scope of our work, then they can't come back and argue with you. I tell homeowners when they're doing home improvement projects with builders who are notorious for not putting things in writing, that when you have a discussion with your builder, even if he doesn't give you a change order, send him an email, send him a letter, put it in a book. Say, hey, Steve, you were here. We talked about this. You're doing this, this, and this. There was no extra charge for these 3 items. We're going to pay you for this. This was the cost. And then when he says, because he won't remember, he's got 14 jobs going on, can't keep track of anything. He's going to say, we never spoke of that. And here it is. And as a matter of fact, I've had personally situations like that where I had to go back to the builder and he says, we never discussed it. And I said, no, I sent you an email about it because I talked to your guy when he was in the house and he said, here, listen, you want me to run some extra wire up to the attic? I have it in my truck. It's free. Okay. And I sent you that email to confirm it. And you didn't,
Yep.
And I forgot about that, so that's a very, very, very good.
Well, that's
advice.
The very first business coach that I had told me that. He said, after you get done with a Zoom call or a conversation, follow up with a bullet point email that says, hey, these are the things that we discussed. Just want to, even if it's not a contract and it's not an agreement for work.
No, but it shows the dealings between the parties.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's because of the fallacy, or I don't know if this is the right word, the failing of our memory. So the world, the taxing authority, the government, the courts, they expect our memories to be perfect. That's the way the law works, in expecting you to remember things and to tell the truth and this and that. You could easily lie and not know that you're lying. I mean, it happens all the time. Look at I was talking before about the whole Brian Williams thing. Remember we went on TV? It was like a 10-year anniversary of this thing. We shot down. Turns out 3 days later, it wasn't even on the helicopter. Well, there's no way that Brian Williams did that to sabotage his own career. I mean, that's stupid.
Right.
Clearly, whatever it was, he believed in his mind over time, all the experiences that this guy has, that he was there.
Well, I mean, just if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know about that, think back to high school. Think about the first date you went on. Think about a football game that you went to.
Yeah. Right.
Like we put our own ideal situation into that. I mean, listen to your grandpa's stories. right? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but it's not. No, I agree with you. I don't think very many people do it maliciously.
No, it's human nature. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And it's human nature to tell stories that support your feelings and support your belief about what happened. And well, she was the hottest girl in school, and maybe she wasn't. Maybe she would only go out with you. I don't know. But your mind does that to you. That's part of our defense mechanisms. People got to recognize that. And that's why they got to do what you said. That is to document the conversation, the dealings between you. Because if it's not a contract, right, and you have text messages and you have little emails and comments back and forth, you'll also have the issue of, well, what about that conversation we had on the phone? You're like, we didn't have a conversation on the phone. Yes, we did. Now somebody's lying, so it becomes difficult.
Yeah. I think communication, the side benefit of this is it forces you to become much better at communication, because you see how you communicated with people and you're like,
right.
Ooh, I don't know if they really got that this is what I wanted from that, or that I understood them. Something else that I learned this working in restaurants: always repeat things back to people, because they may think that they said something, but
they said it differently. It happens all the time.
Right.
You read something, I show you to proofread, you go, yeah, you missed that word there. And you're like, I could have sworn another word was there. Your mind filled it in.
Just repeating stuff back to people. So I want to go down, just because I think that it is hugely beneficial to people to hear from a lawyer. What are some things that they should set up in the beginning of their business to safeguard themselves and like safety net their business? Because I think a lot of people are concerned about money, but they're also concerned about, like, they've heard all these stories. Oh, I could get sued. Oh, this could happen to me. Somebody could come in and take my business. I want you to kind of dispel some myths and give us a best practice. I'll let you have the floor for it.
Okay, sure. And then you wave me down when you say, okay, Mitch, we've talked enough about this. Okay. So the first thing is if you're starting a business, you want to make sure that from a liability standpoint, you're protected. You talk about getting sued, right? And people coming after you, whatever. So you certainly want to make sure you have some basic insurance, like a business owner's policy, even if you're a consultant. So talk to your local agent and find out. It shouldn't be, it might be $50 a month. We're not talking a lot of money, a lot less than what you would have. And one of the advantages of that is that if you do get sued for some liability reasons, the insurance company is going to defend you. So you're kind of buying a lawyer. Okay. So that's the first thing. Also, do never operate as a sole proprietor. Okay. Sole proprietors are for, you and I and hobbies, stuff like that. Okay. Because for $128 in a state filing fee and an online filing application, you can have an LLC set up and a tax ID number for no money. And if you got to pay somebody to do it, maybe it's $500 plus the filing fee. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you want to follow the formalities of running a company, separate bank account. You pay the business expenses out of the business account, not out of your personal account, because that's always an Achilles heel. The guys that set up businesses and then use that business, pay their entire life. It's the smart attorney, not me, who's going to say, hey, you really don't have a business. You're personally liable for all this stuff. And you don't want to do that. Fraud aside, if you commit fraud, it doesn't really matter any of this stuff. You were shaking your head. You had a point?
No, I agree. Like, this is stuff that I see all the time.
All the time.
I'm honest.
Exactly.
I've made some of these mistakes. I've been corrected. But
that's what experience brings you. So if you hire an attorney, I've been doing this for 25, 29 years. You hire an attorney, he's got 20, 25, 30 years of experience. He's clearly done more of these than you have. So there are things that he wants in a contract, how he's going to structure the business, what's going to go in an operating agreement. So you have an LLC or you have a corporation, right? If you have a corporation, you get a corporate book, you get certificates, you got to issue the certificates, you got to create bylaws, follow formalities. With an LLC, it's a little bit different. LLC is more, you can set the rules yourself. So if it's a solo consultancy, you probably don't need an operating agreement, because making an agreement with yourself is kind of silly, right? Unless you're getting a bank loan or they need an agreement. But if you have a partner, clearly you should have something in writing that says who owns what, who makes what decisions, who's responsible for what happens if you want to break up, who gets the intellectual property, who gets the website, all that kind of stuff, because the littlest businesses end up in the biggest fights over all this stuff after they've been operating. And that shouldn't be very difficult. If I do an agreement for somebody, it's anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500, but it doesn't have to be that formal. I'm sure you can find something online or whatever, but definitely have somebody review it. Okay.
I mean, just going back to our write it up, go back and forth between two people till you're both happy with the language, and then take it to somebody to review.
Right. The attorney will add in the legalese and all the stuff, right? And usually, by the way, and this doesn't go just for operating agreements, contracts, usually what's missing when lay people do contracts is the side of the agreement that deals with if things fall apart, right? So if you approach it that way and you say, okay, well, if things go awry, like if everything works out, you and I, we don't need contracts ever, right? It's all the misunderstanding. So if the misunderstanding happens, what takes place? Do we go to a mediator? Is it binding? Is it not binding? Do we go to an arbitrator? Do we go to court? Who pays for the fees? All that type of stuff. And that's usually what's overlooked. Okay. Then if you are dealing with, well, let's say you're B2B. So if you're dealing with other business owners, you're selling something to them, you're providing a service, you have to have a standard client agreement. And I have people tell me, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It feels so sleazy to ask them to sign an agreement. Well, then go, chew gum in the parking lot. I mean, it's not,
you're in business.
You're going to, right. If you're in business, first of all, they would not surprisingly, it's professional to have a client agreement, right? Clearly, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. So you have to get comfortable with how you approach it, how you present it. That's something for you to learn. You can ask other people, what do they do? Talk to business coaches, right? Talk to other people who are in business. What are they? You probably find out 6 out of 8 of them don't have contracts, but they should. So then you create some sort of a generic client agreement, and maybe you do go to an attorney one time. You end up with a template that you can then fill in with the legalese. You want to say things like, if there's a dispute, where do you file suit? We handle it. Yep. This is right. This is how we handle it. There's something you want to have in contracts that if you draft the agreement, because you're providing them the contract, that any ambiguities in the contract, because language is always up for interpretation, are not in and of themselves construed against you, because courts will do that. They'll say, well, Steve, you drafted the agreement and this doesn't seem clear. We're going to construe this against you in his favor. So you can say in there that the parties have reviewed this agreement. Don't, construe those against me. And then other things, like if one of the provisions is found to be illegal, I don't know, let's say you charge too much interest for whatever you're loaning, that it doesn't void the entire agreement. Yep. Stuff like that, right? So that's that. And then if you're dealing with the public, with consumers, you want to, of course, have some sort of a contract, some sort of a sale agreement or something. You want to make sure, depending on what you're selling, that you don't have to deal with get municipal approval. You need a license or something. You need the Board of Health to sign. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I see on Facebook, and my husband makes great wings. He's cooking them out of the kitchen and selling them on Facebook. There's no way he's had the health department come, because they wouldn't approve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't cook out of your own kitchen. So there's some huge liability there. So and then you want to kind of match that up or marry it up with your insurance. So talk to your insurance broker and say, hey, I'm doing this. What kind of insurance do you think I need? Now, look, you can always go overkill with that stuff. I don't know if you need cybersecurity and EPLI if you have no employees, certainly, but you need basic liability package. And you got to make sure that if you're doing certain things, that the insurance company is aware of what you're doing. Like, for example, let's say you have a delivery service and you have the kids, high school kids, doing deliveries with their car. Does your insurance cover them, or does our insurance cover them? Which it might not if they don't disclose it. So you want to make sure that all that stuff is kind of, on, and then you're kind of good to go. You got your business plan, you got your company set up, you got your agreements in place, and you can start to work on everything else. But at least you got the umbrella over your head.
So the thing that I want everybody listening to this to take away is, if you are in business, if you are starting a business, drive that stake in the ground and do this stuff, because if you're going to be a business owner, you have to be comfortable talking about sales. You have to have a client agreement. You can do it without, but it will cause you so much pain. You will quit your business. I know.
Right. It's like people that never file their tax returns, and 15 years later, they haven't filed the tax returns. Well, yeah, the IRS might never catch up with you, but if they do, it's going to be painful.
Yeah. All you have to do is set up basic things. And so the biggest excuse that I hear for this stuff, I hear two things. One, I don't know where to start. Two, I'm scared of how much it is going to cost. So I'm just going to ask you point blank, like, what should it cost? You touched on filing fees for an LLC.
Right.
An LLC in Nevada, which is where I'm at, it cost me $650 to file, do all of it online through a
legal Zoom or something like that.
It was I think it was called Zen Legal, maybe.
Okay.
It's a well-known, like, I reviewed
That includes
sites.
the filing fees with.
Yep.
Yeah.
It cost, and they send me an email a month before and 2 weeks before and the day before my documents are due each year.
Yeah.
So then they give me templates. It's super easy. Nevada is one of the more expensive states to incorporate in.
Right. It is.
So a couple $100 there. Insurance. I actually do not have insurance. You're I think you're two people that have told me that I actually should maybe have business insurance.
Just a basic BOP, business owner's policy, $25-$50 a month.
I looked at it.
$500,000 of liability. You're fine.
Yeah. Somebody else told me, and they said the same thing you did. If you ever get sued, they're just going to pay for the lawyer to show up and settle out of court.
Correct.
Which I'm looking at a bigger liability, like umbrella policy, which is a different story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
But okay, so we've got insurance, we've got an LLC, a basic standard operating agreement. So an operating agreement, you touched on this, 100% true. You want to think about, as painful, as weird as it is, what's this going to look like if we break up? I've been in 2 business partnerships. Both of them, we had those beforehand, thank goodness, because it made it very easy and no one had to get cringy about having the conversation. Hey, this is what we drew up. Cool, let's do it. Okay. And like the business dissolved with no problems.
Right. No, there's nothing to argue about.
Yeah.
I've had a couple during COVID. There were small, like retail type operations that didn't have anything in writing, and it was a shit show. And they definitely spent more money than any of their equipment was worth on legal fees. So I told you how to litigate. So I had to take my client to a friend of mine who handled the litigation because I was trying to negotiate, and the other side were nuts.
Well, they want the money. Yeah.
Not only that, they had one of them that I think of in particular, the partner, because they weren't kids, but they were younger. Let's say they're in their 30s. Mm-hmm. One of the partners, I think it was her dad or something, was like a construction guy, all kinds of money. And she was upset, whatever. So he was just funding this whole thing. He didn't care whether it cost him money or not. So my guy got screwed. I mean, they recently settled it, but my point is that you can't underestimate the value of having something like that until it happens to you. The smallest of things, just like estates. I've had crazy estate contests over the littlest of things when somebody doesn't have a will, Well,
okay. So I want to move.
You want to ask the price though. You want to?
Well, I think total price, like what, $3-4 grand?
Yeah. If you need an operating agreement, if you don't, you could set up an LLC through me in New Jersey for $628.50. You get their certificate, tax ID number, and your first filing with New Jersey. And New Jersey, you don't need a service. They have this thing where you say, please notify me. You put your email and they'll send you notifications every year when your annual reports due. And that's bare bones. If you need an operating agreement, I charge $2,500 of the operating agreement, but I include the LLC in that. So it's not $3,000.
There you go.
$2,500 plus the filing fee. I don't recommend it. And by the way, if you went to like LegalZoom, for example, you don't really save that much money, and you don't have a lawyer, by the way.
Yeah.
So probably a little penny wise and pound foolish decision. And you don't, by the way, I've also had people ask me, well, shouldn't I incorporate it in Delaware? And then unless you're like dealing with foreign people or you're raising money or you're going to go public, just incorporate in the state in which you live and operate. Because you have to file in both states. You'll have to get an agent in the state in which you're not located. It's going to cost you extra money, multiple tax filings. It's not worth it.
Good point. I have been advised several different ways on that, but most people go with the same. Where you're at is where you want to be incorporated, unless you're doing till you break $500,000 to $1 million. I've been told that then it might be worth moving, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right.
Correct.
Much better.
And there may be some motivations behind the structure, asset protection, things like that, where you would use Nevada or Delaware or Alaska, but beyond that, just your small business owner, don't go outside your jurisdiction.
The important thing is just to get it done. So the next thing that I want to kind of touch on in the next 10 or 15 minutes, a lot of people start businesses because they want to get acquired. They want to have that exit payday.
Right.
When people are starting, if you're listening to this and you want to get started in your business and you want to set it up so that it sells smoothly and quickly, what are some things, first off, that they need to do to set it up correctly for an exit? And secondly, what's a reason, like, how do you, like, let's talk about valuation, because we've all heard 3x sales or 5x sales. I would just love your insight in that, because you seem pretty analytical and pretty dialed in on it. I'm
somewhat dialed in. I mean, I'm not an investment banker, but if you talk to some of the small capital advisory companies that do smaller deals like that, which is probably a good way if that's what your goal is, because the CapEx formulas vary from industry to industry, right? All kinds of things. And depending on how your books look, you're going to get a higher multiple if you've managed the company properly than if you don't. And a lot of business owners don't go into business for that. It's a lifestyle business. You know, they have these dreams of like selling their company, making a lot of money, but they don't operate it with that in mind. Right. So it's very important that you do the research. I can't tell you specifically by industry. You do hear a 3 to 5 multiple common, but that's not really a rule of thumb for anything. I mean, the ones that are looking to grow and sell, I mean, they get a 20x. It just depends on the industry they're in, how well they've positioned the company and so forth. But if you want to grow your business and you want to sell your business, a lot of it has to do with putting the procedures in place and the operational procedures of the company and the people that you hire and how you operate your business. That's going to be very important to somebody who comes along, who's probably another small business owner that's looking to buy your business, right? I mean, acquisition by a larger company is a secondary issue, but if you're really looking to just grow and sell to another business owner or a group of business owners, they're going to be looking. Are your employees on non-compete agreements and employment contracts? Do you have contracts with your vendors, and are they transferable? Because they probably want to buy the assets, not the business itself. Do you need certain kind of licenses? Are those transferable? I mean, all those types of things you have to pay attention to, because I constantly review business transactions where business owners said, oh no, my employees, they wouldn't go anywhere. And the guy who's buying it kind of relying on these key people to stay with the business. He's not going to run it himself. So then they say, yeah, well, we don't have non-compete. We'll get them to sign non-competes. Well, something you should know about non-competes. If you don't sign it at the beginning, when you hire the person, it's kind of hard to enforce. You can do it. You got to give them some consideration, but basically you're saying to them, listen, sign this or we're going to fire you. So that's not consideration. So all that kind of stuff you put in place, and then talk to people who have worked with people raising capital, have worked with founders before that have exited, and find out all the things that they've done, because it varies by industry tremendously. And I don't do a lot. I mean, I do a lot of those deals, but I'm not on that side of the table very often.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, Mitch, this has been awesome chatting. If people want to reach out to you, if people are interested in your services, maybe they want to have you draft an agreement, where should they go to find you? Where's the best place? Okay.
First of all, I work in New Jersey. So I'm a New Jersey barred attorney. So with the exception of like federal tax planning, they got to be in New Jersey. I got to refer all the other week. And in the middle of the conversation, I realized he's in California. So that's the first thing. Also, if they go to my website, you can put it in the show notes, beinhakerlaw.com. Mm-hmm. There are certain do-it-yourself stuff where if you needed a basic agreement, a will, you can do it. If you're willing to put the data in, it'll save you half the price. So instead of $2,500, it might be $1,500, $1,600, $1,700. You have to get it signed yourself, but I'll send it back to you cleaned up with signing instructions, 48, 72 hours, and you're good to go. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. The podcast is also on LinkedIn, Facebook. I think because of the system I use, I also post on Instagram and Twitter, but I rarely check that. So I have a chat on my computer, on my website. I think it gets to me. Somebody just sent me a chat the other day. I was like, oh, look at that. So if you chat, I think it will come to me and I will respond, but I guess that's an experiment in the making.
Nice.
And I hope they follow my podcast. You can get it on any of the directories, The Accidental Entrepreneur.
So talk to me really quick. I wanted to actually finish up the show. I wanted you to talk a little bit about your show.
Sure.
Who do you have on? Talk to me about who is the accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah, I get referred a lot of people that are, in business for themselves. They failed, they've succeeded, and they're doing well now. I've interviewed people from family-owned businesses as to how it's passed from generation to generations, kept going, and things like that. I've talked to social media influencers, authors. And we just had John Mann on with us, his partner, Bob Berg. I've had Bob Berg on the podcast, talk about the Go-Giver and the Go-Giver series, great book series. I had Mike Michalowicz on my podcast, if you know any of his stuff.
Nice.
I love his stuff, by the way. I love his books. And I've talked to all kinds of different people all over the world. I've talked to a voice coach in Singapore, I just all over Vancouver, Singapore, London, Australia, all around the United States. I just try to find interesting people that work in the SMB space, that have interesting stories that are valuable to the people that are listening and can share their ideas. And like my tagline says, help them get a hold of their business. So, and I would start with my first episode with this guy, Jack Killian, who's a very good friend of mine. He also did my 100th episode, two-part series episode. And it was all about his story, which is fascinating.
Awesome.
So that's the best way to do it. Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, all the directories.
Awesome. That is in the show notes as well. So if you check those out, I'm definitely going to listen to some of them. So Profit First is an interesting book.
Very good. I run my practice that way. I use Profit First.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's it's got mixed reviews. It took me a while to read it actually, because so many people were like, it's just the envelope system, but it is more than the envelope system. I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're getting started in business or if you're experienced in business. Either way, if you want to have a profitable plan for your business, definitely worth reading. It won't take you that long.
No, his books are good. The Pumpkin Plan, the Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, any other books, they're all good stuff.
Good dude. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a joy to have you here.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
No problem. To everybody else, until next time, take action, change lives, and make money. We will see you soon.